right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this technical session, Opportunities for Financing and Private Sector Involvement. My name is Alexia Michels. I am Senior Water Resources Specialist at ADB, South Asia Department, and I will be the moderator for this technical session. In today's session, our speaker will propose some answers to the following question. How can we build a compelling business case for financing and investment for the productive use of water? All our speakers will present their business case for the sustainable use of water for irrigation and to guarantee crop productivity and revenue, either through new technologies or innovative business models. So before turning over the mic to the speakers, I would like to thank our rapporteur for this session, the young water professional Maria Pascalia Judith Justiaris, who is a student and journalist from the University of Glasgow, and PT Compass Media Nusantara. Of course, we want these technical sessions to be as interactive as possible. For this, we encourage you to write all your questions to our speakers in the Q&A panel that you can find on the right-hand side of your screen. We will have almost 30 minutes at the end of this technical session for the Q&A after the presentations. So you can ask your questions to all our speakers during their presentations, and we will keep them and ask them afterwards during the Q&A session. We hope to receive a lot of questions from the attendants. I am also using this opportunity to remind all our guest speakers to kindly respect the 10 minutes allotted for their presentations in order to have enough time for the Q&A at the end of this technical session. So for now, without further ado, I will introduce our first speaker. Our first speaker is Dr. Azaduz Daman, Irrigation Institutional Specialist at ADB. Dr. Zaman started his career in irrigation and water management as an irrigation and water management engineer in 1972 and continues as a social engineer. He earned Bachelor of Law and PhD in agricultural science. He retired in 2006 after 34 years of service in irrigation, and he attended executive education course, Strategic Perspective for Nonprofit Management in 2007 at Harvard Business School. He published more than 50 technical papers and books on groundwater wells and sustainable irrigation management with an appropriate cost recovery model. He developed a special technology called inverted well for tube well design. He introduced an appropriate irrigation management system and cost recovery through prepaid meter and smart card in pumping units. And finally, he founded an NGO called Center for Action Research Barind for undertaking action research for the improvement of rural livelihoods, especially for women, the poor, and tribal people. Dr. Zaman, the floor is yours.
Yes, okay. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Azaduz Zaman. My title of the paper or the topic is Sustainable and Self-Financing Public Sector Pumping Irrigation Project, Barind Model. I think you could see from my title, there's a two words I have highlighted, public and pumping. Because most of the developing country, this public sector irrigation system and management is a cause of concern for all the donors, all the stakeholders. So what I did for the last 30 years, it is like a social laboratory. The whole area of the around 35,000 kilometers is that is the laboratory. What I did in the field, exactly I'm presenting over here for you. Yeah. Let me go for the next slide, please. The question that could public sector pumping irrigation project be sustainable along with a self-financing mechanism? This is a big question. And if the answer is yes, then what, how, and where? Is there any example? exactly what I did as an example. That's I'm presenting over here. In fact, what I learned from the field, that from the policy level at the government, whether it's a ministry or other, there should be first that, okay, if the government allows the irrigation agency to hold any income from whether it's irrigation charge or any source of income with that authority, that is number one criteria that is needed over here. Second, that the O&M, salary, allowances, retirement benefit of all employees should be made from the earnings of the project, and let the employee see it and let them feel it. That will give them both inspiration, also some responsibility. Third, the total manpower of a big irrigation project should be not all for the full time. It should be full time and also part time. What I have experienced, that it is better to be around half to maximum 2/3 full time, or the part time is a half and 1/3 of the total employee. Number fifth is the provision for the performance-based incentive. If someone does good work, let him receive the incentive. Because if everybody gets the same salary, same wages, same remuneration, okay, if I work, I will get the salary. If I don't get work, I will get the same. So it is better that to have the performance-based incentive. Next slide, please. The next one. This already I have stated this one. So yes, play. The guidelines, what I've learned, that okay, this is the physical aspect, that proper installation of the irrigation equipment, whether it is a tube well, whether it is a surface water pumping unit, it should be well located. Electrification or the solar power for all pumping units. It is better for the water users to be ensured. Number three is underground distribution system. You can see that there is the pipeline over here. So no wastage of the land and no wastage of the water as minimum. Fourth and most important is the prepaid metering system with the smart card for water users. That's the very much important to attain the equity among the water users. Otherwise, one will try to deprive the next one. Next slide. Next. Yeah. Now the question of the that I told about the infrastructures. Now this is the institutional aspect. The institutional aspect is that we need the
Yes, I think we are experiencing some issues, some connection issues with Dr. Zaman. Let's give him.
Yeah, the connection is the problem. Yeah.
Okay. So you're back. Yeah. You're back. Okay.
Yeah, looks like it's back. Yeah. The skilled manpower should be there. And that should be the full-time and part-time. The mobility is a very important thing. So there should be provision of the mobility facility, as well as determine the irrigation charge. Let the water, you just see that the water charge is imposed or assessed on the equity basis. And time to time, the voice of the water users should be heard, which normally the public sector try to ignore, let's say. The surplus fund should be allowed to use for the modernization of the sustainability. And very important is the CEO who will be head of the, he must be given the responsibility for the whole of the project, not any segment of the, and so there should not be governments within the government. There should be uniform decision from the top. The major concern, the irrigation project, the most of the time the public sector officers behave like a king or treat water users as the tenants or the riot. In subcontinent, they call it the riot. Public sector officers issue the orders like a decree, and that should be mandatory for the water users. Corruption, I think I don't need to mention this. This is known to everybody. Then the decision through the, I think next slide you have to go, please. Yeah. Oh. I'm sorry, little bit. Yeah. As I already mentioned about the manpower, it should be two categories, full-time and part-time. Appropriate tools to be provided to the technical person, and mobility, that should be very much important thing. As an example, just why I mentioned the marine irrigation model. Marine is around 3% of the total area of Bangladesh. You can see this one, and this area is the total of the project area, which is around 13,266 square kilometer. And this was initially approved as a project in 1986. And then it was as a project, it continued up to 1991. And in 1991, it was decided it should be self-financing, and it will be, then it was approved as an independent authority in 1991. Next slide, please. You can see that the board of governors, there is the private sector, there is a public sector, and the member secretary will be the CEO of the authority. You can see from 1984 to 2021 that how the irrigation equipment increases and area covered. Next slide, please. The most important thing, as I mentioned already, the assessment of the irrigation charge. All the cost, irrigation cost, electricity cost, remuneration of the pump operator, repair maintenance cost, all of the, even the depreciation. And that's the rate assessed in Bangladeshi taka, but it is also converted into dollar. Just 0.5, which is a $1, then gradually it increases up to $1.9 for 1 hour. This is all, this is a per hour, the volumetric basis. And you can see that around 24% of the income goes for the salary, wages, office expenses, and highest it goes for the 49% for the electricity. And you can see the top, this is the income, and second one, line, the red one, next one, please. Yeah, this one, the red one is the operating cost, and the last one, this is the saving. In 1 year or even 2 years, you can see that that is the negative, because there are many reasons, the crop failure or the management, something it happened. Next, please. Yeah, okay, yeah. And the last one I showed over here, that the indicator for the assessment of the efficient irrigation by FAO, they had 30 parameters, of which I thought that 12 number is very much relevant for this project. And I put over here, and you can see that all these are in the positive side. These top 12, 10 numbers parameter assessed by Marine Authority itself, and last two, that is the CSIRO Australia, they published a paper and they shows it. This is also the positive. So that's my presentation. If anyone, any question, I'll be happy to respond. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Zaman, for this very comprehensive presentation of this irrigation model in Bangladesh.
Yeah.
I hope there will be a lot of questions. I saw that there are some questions coming in. We will take them at the end of the session later on.
Please.
So,
please.
Thank you, Dr. Zaman. It's now time to introduce our second guest for today, second speaker. It's Dr. Kenneth Niels, team leader and project management expert at INACOM. Dr. Niels is a team leader and project management expert of the loan implementation consultants of ADB-funded sustainable rural infrastructure and watershed management project in Laos since 2021. Previously, he worked in Bangladesh as the chief of party of the World Bank-funded Sustainable Coastal and Marine Fisheries Project. This work follows over 40 years of work in private agribusiness development and independent consulting. His mission has been to manage and or assist agribusinesses in profitable and sustainable development. Dr. Niels, please, over to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that introduction. Could we have the next slide, please? Okay, this presentation again describes a market-led high-value crop enterprise development in northern Laos. This project, the Sustainable Rural Infrastructure and Watershed Management Sector project, aims to enhance by doubling rural incomes to over $1,000 per hectare in 4 provinces, northern provinces in Laos: Luang Prabang, Xayaburi, Houaphong, and Xiên Quan. And it does that by rehabilitating or building new irrigation infrastructure on 18 irrigation schemes with a command area of about 4,200 hectares. It does it through market-led agriculture production of high-value crops under irrigation in the dry season, November through April. And it does that through the protection of watershed ecological services in the entire watershed area, which exceeds 200,000 hectares. And it does it through the improvement of community nutrition in the project area, with over 60% of women of reproductive age, at least this is the indicator, meeting minimum dietary diversity. Could we have the next slide, please? This presentation focuses on the market-led aspects of the project, and it should be noted that the EFAD project is our sister project. Its name is Partnerships for Irrigation and Commercialization of Smallholder Agriculture Project. Actually is responsible for all the production on the irrigation schemes. And of course, its aim is improving productivity with the farmers in all of the project areas of this same ADB project. So it's a sister project of ours. We work hand in hand, coordinate our projects. The project I am team leader of is the market-led project, agriculture and agribusiness project. The market-led activities of the project involve all value chain actors, including our target, 45% women, in strategic planning. So we've done strategic planning in all 4 provinces. And this is after market assessments had been made in each of the 4 provinces in order to obtain a priority of the high value crops that have the highest potential. Next slide, please. Because of time, I can only talk initially here about 2 provinces, Xiên Quan and Houaphong, which are on the Vietnamese border, near the Vietnamese border, or share the Vietnamese border. Now, the cultivated area in what happens to be 9 irrigation schemes that we're rehabilitating or constructing in these 2 provinces has about 2,000 hectares with about 46 different villages involved. The total, the project has cleared hundreds of hectares of the irrigation schemes of unexploded ordnance. We did this the first year, and we have certificates so that we can go forward with the promotion of, or the start of construction. The intent is that the current crop intensity, since we don't have irrigation now in the dry season, is only 1.13 in Zinquan, 1.23 in Huafan, and that would reach 2, of course, once the irrigation schemes have been constructed. And we're only getting the first 4 started in October of this year. So we've got 18 construction projects ahead of us. As far as the prioritized high value crops, again, I mentioned we did the market assessments. The 2 provinces share to some extent some of the highest margin products. And I'll get into those individually, these high value crops in each province in a later slide. Let's go on to the next slide, please. So our market flow chart, this is not a standard value chain chart that many of you may have seen. It's not where the producer sells to the collector sells to the wholesaler sells to the retailer. That's oversimplified, actually. The collector and wholesaler are the 2 critical players in the value chains in these 2 provinces, the collectors at the local and provincial level, as well as the wholesalers. We've added cold storage into the flow chart. It's a critical feature of the project, which allows us to add shelf time, obviously, to products that have higher prices during the early or late part of the seasons. Let's go on to the next slide, please. Okay, we're going to start with Zinquan. Our market assessments were principally on prices, costs, and margins. We, of course, did a lot of work in the field. We've gathered a lot of export information from border areas of these 2 provinces. Spent a lot of time in the markets, wet markets in Vientiane and Luang Prabang, which are the 2 national markets. And just some of the highlights, just quickly highlights, there's a lot of numbers here, but what is very important, which oftentimes is overlooked, is that regardless of, and remember the prices that we're trying to key in on, the target markets, the pricing opportunities that we're trying to key on are early season and late season, not the traditional season. I'll talk about that later in the slide. But what's important to know is that the collector and wholesalers typically do not change their margins for any one product very much, regardless of the price. And so it is the producer who gains if he can delay his production to a time of the year when the supply is lower, or early season, same when the time of the year when the price is higher and the supply is low. And just for information purposes, we can note under the PM producer margin, the PM dollars per kg, you can see where, or dollars per hectare, I guess would be better. The yard long beans, what we've found to be is a good margin for producers. Even cucumbers, off-season cucumbers, and then we have garlic. Garlic in Zinquan is a very has high potential because of its attractiveness to many buyers, not only national, but also regional. It's got some special traits and characteristics in terms of flavor, and it's typically of higher prices are paid, premium prices are typically paid. So I did want to mention then that in many of these cases in Zhenquan, I do show export. Zhenquan is tied more to the Vientiane and Luang Prabang wet markets, not so much tied to Vientiane or Vietnam market. Let's move on to the next slide, please. Yes, okay. And in this case, I'm talking about watermelon is one of the major commodities which got hit by COVID. The exports did not go out, but this will be a major commodity for Huafan. I'm not going to go into any more detail here, but let's go on to the next slide. What we did, and I'm not going to need to go into this any further than to just say that we've matched the production possibilities and the different harvesting times that are possible. We've done this with PIXA, which is the other project, and the government extension people. We've matched that with the market opportunities. Next slide, please. And so we have different planting times that will come early or late. We have harvest times that now can come at an earlier time or a later time. All this facilitated by having the water, having shade, and high tunnels and these kinds of things. Next slide, please. And so then we bring together the marketing opportunities, but that includes what pricing opportunities, off-season, post-harvest, and processing opportunities. And so we have quite a array of market opportunities. If the production possibilities are there, we have great opportunities for getting the higher prices and margins. Next slide. So basically, in conclusion, the higher gross margins and different types of drying, storing, processing, and market promotion are part and parcel of the project. Further work, we have to work further in terms of developing some returns on investment, cold storage, as well as shelling, packaging peanuts, and so many other high-value crop processing opportunities. That's the end of my presentation. I look forward to any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Niels, for your presentation. We will come back to you in half an hour or so for the questions. Now our next presenter is Dr. Aliya Tankibayeva, researcher at the Natural Resources Institute, DKU, Kazakhstan. Dr. Tangibayeva has a PhD and MPA, and her research focus is on financing water infrastructure, mobilizing blended finance, WASH, and gender aspects in water sector. Dr. Tangibayeva, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is a pleasure and honor today to present at the Asian Water Forum. I would like to share my presentation about the index insurance of soil moisture and experience of insurance in Kazakhstan via a unified online platform. This is quite innovative development. Next slide. Yes, I would like to share the interim result or the stage of the larger project, which is devoted to understanding how do farmers of Kazakhstan generate value added from investing in sustainable water use and in sustainable agricultural practices in general. The idea is that insurance can help optimize the complex measures of sustainable agriculture in order to understand how farmers move from thinking of investment as a cost or as additional resources which are needed to spend, and think of value added from this investment in terms of the increasing productivity of agricultural output, of agricultural production, and the value added from resource efficient agriculture. So next slide. So the current insurance scheme, which is the index insurance, it was introduced in 2019 as a pilot at several fields, and now is offering as a regular service available for farmers in all regions. So the previous insurance scheme was an obligatory or mandatory insurance for all farmers, and it was subsidized by the government. So the insurance premium was quite low and affordable. However, the incentives either to use insurance as a planning tool or as an economic tool to optimize the agricultural production was not clear and possibly not effective. And also the private sector participation was quite low because the sector is highly risky. The effects of the climate change is already felt through the water and extreme climate events, and the approximately like south of Kazakhstan, west of Kazakhstan, and north, which is especially agricultural region, have experienced number of extreme weather events like droughts or excess moisture. So a number of years, and the recent was happening in 2019. So the participation in the insurance scheme for public-private sector was not really incentivizing. By 2013, only 2 private insurance companies were left, which were willing to work in the sector and which were willing to provide insurance. The banking and financing institutions, nonetheless, were really encouraging and demanding the insurance from weather risks for other type of loans and for other type of the programs to help improve agriculture. And the introducing of this of the index insurance was really innovative and timely and needed measure. So it is not obligatory, and it is more based on the market pricing and the market mechanism. The state still take part and is subsidizing 50% of the insurance premium. However, not the insurance loss, the losses from the risk events as it used before. Next, please, next slide. Currently, the insurance is offered in 3 types of the product. This is the deficit moisture insurance, excess moisture, and insurance for winter crops. The idea is that insurance is being like risk incidents are being assessed by the index calculated by Holland company Vandersat, and the index is informed by data collected through satellite, through constellation of satellite like NASA satellites, satellites, JAXA, and the company Vandersat claimed that the accuracy of the assessment and monitoring is quite high. It is not interfered by the like clouds or other type of the land effects or weather effects, and therefore it can be used as a good assessment for the moisture in the soil, and then the the part of the stakeholders who are taking who are implementing this insurance risk is actually to understand how this index relate to the field conditions, and also how this index can help to improve the production models, and basically what kind of the inputs this index can bring to the agricultural practices. Depending on the type of the crops and also on the growing season, farmers now can do their own choices based on the information they receive through the platform or their previous experience and other type of the knowledge they have, and they can choose the amount of land they want to insure, and also choose the phase at which they want to take on this insurance. So there are a number of the brackets which is available, and it is yet a kind of a probing phase, and there are lots of the research which is going on and needs to be done further to understand again how to relate the index to help farmers in fields actually hedge against the climatic risk, but also use it as a tool to improve their productivity. So the rate of the insurance premiums is standardized based on the hectare, and this is a kind of compensatory mechanism to avoid the excessive transaction costs for going in-field, making the in-field assessment, understanding the exposure to risk and everything. So now the standardized rates allow to make just to rely on informed choices by the farmers and how they want to get insurance. The platform fee is about $20, which is quite affordable. And then the platform provides a range of other services like registering trading contracts, actually doing trades, kind of applying for credits, and the financial management as a type of these services. Next slide. So this is just the adoption rate, and it is quite favorable. So over the 3 years, the rate almost doubled. And what we can see is that the type of insurance is still under the experimentation, because both farmers and other participants in the scheme are trying to understand how kind of to allocate the different type of insurance and what is needed in what kind of the form. Yes, please, next. And at this moment, there are not yet answers, but it is the dimension of the study to see actually how the subsidies and investment into water, fertilizers, and into capital assets work together with the insurance and without insurance, and how all of these can actually be used as a planning tool. The adoption rates are also quite increasing. The preconditions which helped to operate this insurance and the other type of the online services is the digital mapping of croplands, which in all regions of Kazakhstan are almost 100%, quite a good rate. Also, similar type of work is done for the rangelands, and there are also insurance products based on the index insurance, which are sought over for the rangelands and other type of the agricultural sectors, not only crops. There are also areas for improvements, of course, like the issues really with understanding the index by farmers, but also understanding of the agricultural production by other stakeholders. So what are the risks and how they can be shared, and also how the value added can be captured. There are, of course, the needed for the informational support for farmers in the remote areas, which is not much about technology, because the internet coverage is quite fine, but which is about the really informational resources and bringing these resources to the farmers. Next slide. And now, as you can see, the scheme is actually open for multiple stakeholders, and it is already quite a multi-partnership. So there is the role of the government in terms of legislative framework, but also some subsidizing and ensuring, like subsidizing risks, for example. There are also participation of the public institutions like scientific and research institute about the data inputs and about the kind of inputs to the assessment and monitoring. Also room for the IT services, the insurance companies, reinsurance, and also creating different packages with other financial institutions like banks and microfinancing institutions. And of course, for farmers and the services to help farmers educate about the risks and about the economics of the agricultural sector. I would like to share next slide. And these are pointers for the future studies. As mentioned, this is work in process, and it is really, the idea is not to make sure that we have as many insured farmers as possible, but really to understand how the value added is captured and increased, and how the co-benefits are created from the insurance and other type of the financial and economic institutes available, and also informational instruments available, also incentivizing different kind of stakeholders to take part into the sustainable water resource efficient agriculture, and the development of new insurance products. Next slide is the list of literature used. Thank you very much for your attention, and I would be happy to answer all questions. Thank you.
Emerging farmers. Before I continue, just in case you wonder that isn't that the role of the emerging farmers themselves to adopt technology? I think that also brings us back to the topic of this session, related to financing and the private sector development, and that I will come back in a bit. Food security, I guess there's no need for me to go into it. If you are following any of the news or actually some of the sessions at this forum, that it frequently comes up. I think it serves as a reminder to all of us that agriculture remains a key sort of global challenge for our food security. But more so than that, the rural areas where agriculture is, or mostly is, it's far more than just like food production areas. Rural development is indeed a key to the sustainability of our global development. This lies in not only of this critical interface between agriculture and the environment. We know that, for example, agriculture is responsible for most of the global biodiversity losses, and agriculture is also responsible for most of the pollutants that we emit into our environment. The rural areas are also on the forefront of climate change, both in terms of mitigation and adaptation. That I will not go into details, but also I think that's very clear to most of our developing member countries that agriculture remains a major driver of economic growth. Now, I think through the pandemic, we also realized that agriculture and actually also rural side can act as shock absorber during sort of critical times. For example, this graph shows that in 2020, when the pandemic just erupted in China, that many migrant workers stayed back in the rural areas. As is with the many other sectors that are developing in China and also in broader sort of developing societies, agriculture is too developing. Reflecting in numbers that we say that in China, for example, agriculture is transitioning from subsistence to value-added agriculture. For example, the land transfer in PRC has increased gradually but steadily, in the past few years. But also accompanying this is the increased adoption of machinery among the farmers. You might say that the machinery is not kind of like a grand, sort of very advanced sort of machines that we can sometimes say and admire in developed economies. But that's also what is needed and can be afforded by the farmers. Now, talking about the farmers, we often paint a gloomy and doom picture that, with large-scale out-migration from the rural areas, and with the change in the rural demography, and what's left behind, the old women and less educated, and inevitably that we say many agriculture are becoming part of cooperatives that either among farmers themselves or just commercial operations. But also we are seeing an interesting sort of emergence of new types of farmers. I think that's these emerging farmers probably first sort of observed in South Africa, but increasingly in China, Vietnam, India, and many Asian Pacific countries. In China, the emerging farmers are characterized by 5 sort of features. As we say it, the first one is the diversified population. They are not necessarily the same kind of picture of old farmers that you could see in news, and there are increasingly sort of commercial scale operations. Commercial scale may be different and definitely far behind like international cooperation, but family business, local cooperatives, and green. Like, the emerging farmers are really embracing this sort of environment principles and, health diet, which together forms this sort of new type of agriculture. And also typically the emerging farmers are internet savvy and they receive high agricultural-like income. Now, talking about the support of the emerging farmers, again, I guess that going back to the initial question that, shouldn't the farmers themselves be leading the sort of adoption of technology and what kind of supports are needed? And especially if we look at the history, that irrigation infrastructure and management systems are traditionally designed through a top-down approach. That often we see farmers on the receiving side. But with the new emerging farmers, we actually argue that there is a need to change our methods and to sort of help agricultural transformations, minimal disruption or minimal intervention approach. And there are implications for policymakers, authorities, financials like ADB, ourselves, and the private sector more broadly. What I want to mention here probably is that, okay, for authorities, the change from management to service delivery, that's often talked about. But I think with emerging farmers, that's really becoming the key. Now, financing for technology adoption, there are many different fronts: land, water, machinery, and automation. Digitalization is the key to sort of green recovery. And also capacity building of not only farmers, but public, private sectors, and the risk management to support these emerging farmers. And we are seeing increasingly this coming from the public investment and the private sector credit access, insurance, etc. Just the way we learned from Ania. But just give a quick example, a peek at the public investment that ADB often do through our operations. We invest, for example, in new generation of irrigation infrastructure, focus on decentralized and nature-based solutions, value chain, digital infrastructure, and market development. Here is an example in Fujian farmland project in PRC that, through a 191 million investment that we aim to promote organic farming and soil conservation. And I still remember that at the beginning that, how that was resisted by farmers, but now how it will become sort of farmers' own demand to have this organic agriculture. And improving credit access for emerging farmers. Here is another example from the Anhui Huangshan project that ADB known together with our co-financiers that we developed a traditional grant, but it's kind of like an incentive grant to support farmers adopt environmental friendly and climate resilient agricultural practices. But also in parallel, we established a green investment fund aiming at sort of small enterprises to encourage sort of service delivery and supplies of clean, environmentally friendly technologies to farmers. The key sort of takeaway message that I want to say here is that, okay, of course, depending on development efforts, but surely seeing, in China, in here in Philippines, Southeast Asia, and larger sort of Asia Pacific developing communities, that emerging farmers are sort of driving the changes in agriculture and responding to market needs. And the technology is the key to help emerging farmers improve the productivity, to improve our food security, but also to ensure the sustainable development goals. Now, the investment in irrigation systems cannot be business as usual. We need to adopt to the infrastructure and sort of the management needs of these emerging farmers and support the technology they use. And for policymakers, management authorities, financials, private sectors, all of us, we have an opportunity here to sort of to promote our sort of key objectives, business, but also in this process, really help these farmers adopting technologies for better water management and improved food supply. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Dr. Kai, for this very interesting presentation. Okay, so time is now to introduce our last speaker for today's session, Dr. Archisman Mitra, researcher, Water Resources Economics at International Water Management Institute. Dr. Mitra is an agricultural economist with 9 years of experience on issues related to sustainable management of natural resources, building climate resilience agriculture, and reducing poverty for older farmers in South Asia. His specialization
Should I? Yeah. Okay, so hi, hello everyone, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to present. So I'll be talking about today about private-public partnership in promoting solar irrigation in Bangladesh. So this is part of the project that International Water Management Institute is doing with collaboration with funding from SDC in South Asia, in 4 countries in South Asia. So yeah, so to set the context, in Bangladesh, diesel irrigation has been very crucial for boro cultivation, which is the summer paddy, which requires mainly the most irrigation for achieving food security in Bangladesh. So till 1990s, the groundwater irrigated area and surface water irrigated area were equal, but from starting from 1990s through liberalization policy in pump imports, the growth of groundwater irrigated area grew from 50% to 73%, and this reflected in the growth in boro production, which became from 1/3 of food production to half of food production currently. So the main growth that came in food grains production came from boro, which was supported by groundwater irrigation, diesel-based groundwater irrigation. But diesel has, of course, there is emissions, GHG emissions associated with it, but it is also very costly. So either to keep the cost down for farmers, either the government has to provide subsidy, or if the government stops subsidy, then the prices for the farmers rise. And we actually see that during the 2012-13, when the prices were very high, government subsidy burden for petroleum went up to 1.6 billion USD dollars. And then as the oil prices fell, governments gradually stopped giving the subsidy, but the prices remain at the same. And now when again the prices have risen, the diesel price has shot from 65 BDT per liter to 80 BDT per liter. So it's very expensive for farmers now. And also this poses risk in terms of foreign exchange reserve of Bangladesh. So both these objectives sort of makes leads for Bangladesh focus on renewable energy. So the government states renewable energy and also solar irrigation is basically to gain energy security and protection from fuel price shocks, and also reduction in emissions as a part of their NDC commitments. So currently the renewable energy sector is quite small. It's only 3%, and solar is probably less than 2%. The total installed capacity of, if I look at only solar irrigation, it's only 50 megawatts, which is less than 1% of the total capacity now. But they have ambitious targets for the future. So the main organization that works in the solar irrigation sector in Bangladesh is ITCOL, and they currently have 1,500 pumps, and their target is around 10,000 pumps by 2027. And the renewable target is 10% for them, for Bangladesh. So, but what is interesting in Bangladesh is that there are already, even in this nascent stage, there are already different models of solar pump promotion. So what it calls a model, I'll talk about, they constitute 90% of the pumps. So I'll talk about this in my presentation today. But there are also government organizations like BMD and PADC who are working in solar irrigation. Their model is fully subsidized pumps and panels given to the farmers and operated in a group ownership model. And then there is another model, which is the electricity board is doing, where it is the grant and the loan amount is given to individual farmers who, these are smaller pumps given to individual farmers. So the ITCOL model, which is the fee-for-service model, is a very unique example of public-private partnership in solar irrigation in South Asia. So in this model, these sponsors are basically private companies or NGOs who get loan and grant amount from ITCOL. ITCOL is basically a government NBFI that gives loans to private entities for infrastructure investing, and all renewable energy grant goes through ITCOL. So ITCOL gives grant and loan to sponsors, who then sets up these panels in the field, and the farmer, generally a farmer from the village, is employed as the operator of the pump, and then they sell irrigation to the farmers. The revenue that they get, it goes into paying back the loan that they took from ITCOL, and after the loan repayment, the revenue accrues as profit to them. The breakup of the financial modality is that 50% grant, 35% loan and 15% equity. There is a 6% interest rate. There is a 10 years repayment period. These pumps are generally big, so the most common panel size would be around 30 to 40 kilowatt peak, and the pump size would be around 18 to 25 kilowatt. And all these ETCOL seats are in off-grid areas which are diesel irrigated. So the model is unique because solar pump, as we know, has a very high initial capital cost, and these acts as a barrier for individual farmers to have access to solar pumps. Because of the liquidity constraint, the initial capital that they have to put in, and also it's a risky investment for them. So one way to tackle that, which we see in Nepal or in Eastern India, has been to give high subsidy, 80 to 90% subsidy, and then a small system sold to individual farmers. But subsidy, we should realize that subsidy itself is a limited resource. So so the more subsidy you give affects how fast and how many pumps you can install. So in this model, in this PPP model, private companies are providing the capital, the initial capital, 15% capital, and undertaking the risk of setting up this irrigation business. And that allows that the benefits of solar irrigation can be extended to smallholder farmers in a quicker way. So just to touch upon the multiple benefits of ETCOL, of solar pumps itself that we found from a study of ETCOL SIPs is that, first of all, it reduces emission. There's a 90% reduction in diesel use within the SIP command area. These SIP command areas are generally 40 acres, suppose for standard size would be. And it displaces around 5 to 6 diesel pumps in one SIP. And the SIP farmers are paying 20 to 30% lower charges compared to diesel pumps. And also it is very convenient to the buyers. So if as you can see in the picture, if they're operating these diesel pumps, they have to take it to the field. It's a laborious process, time-consuming process. Here, because the operator is doing everything, there is time savings in terms of lost wages for irrigation management, also no need to set up queues, etc. with the pump owners. And also all these ETCOL pumps have underground pipes for the water delivery, which has cost implications, but it also saves in terms of creating these field channels, which will otherwise be needed for diesel pumps. And given that land is so scarce, this is very valuable. Even the small amount of land that they can save from these field channels is valuable to the farmers. So SIPs are unique as a mitigation technology. There is no penalty on yield and farmers' profits, but there is beneficial to the farmers. So what we see is that solar irrigation is beneficial to farmers, and PPP is a viable model or a useful model to spread such a lumpy, costly investment in areas where there are mostly smallholder farmers who could not otherwise afford it. But we should also be careful that it's not suitable for all kind of regions. So we sort of discuss some of the main factors that determines where such a model would be feasible. So firstly, the current irrigation cost has to be quite high. So it depends on what type of crops they grow, how deep is the groundwater, what is the alternative energy source, etc. But basically what it says is that unless the current irrigation cost is high, even after reduction of cost in solar pumps, the investor can earn enough revenue that they can recoup the investment they have made. But if, for example, in Bangladesh, this is only applicable in regions where they are growing boro with diesel pumps, which is boro needs a lot of irrigation and diesel is very expensive. So there it is useful. Then there are institutional factors. For example, you need experienced private partners, NGOs or private companies already existing. So Bangladesh has a history of that already, and you need active water market. For example, if everybody has a pump like in Punjab, it won't be feasible. Then there are biophysical factors which are important: enough radiation, solar radiation, good quality groundwater, no cyclone storms, etc. And finally, this is only feasible if the implementing agency has a target of enough solar pumps. So if they don't have a high enough target, then because many of the benefits come from the economies of scale. So if you have enough number of schemes, a sponsor have enough number of schemes, then his per unit cost goes down. So all these factors are important where it is viable, this kind of model. And also there are challenges to model. For example, there might be reduction in demand because of availability of other forms of energy, or if cropping pattern change due to external factors. Then there is, through climate change, there might be increased risk of cyclones, storms, flooding, which might damage these panels. So there's need for insurance sector to insurance for this kind of investment, and government might have some role to play there. And also low capacity utilization is a problem. I'll discuss on this more. But the main point is lots of preconditions for this PPP model to be suitable. Especially current irrigation has to be expensive with active water markets and experienced private players. So about this capacity utilization, so in Bangladesh, for example, these are set up in off-grid areas, and Boro is extremely crucial for the financial viability of it. But Boro also, there's a certain peak period when peak irrigation period at the starting days when there's huge demand for irrigation. So to capture enough command area, you need to have sufficiently large panels. So the panel to pump capacity is quite large in that area, but also the demand for irrigation is limited to few months of the year. So SIP operation is, so the panels are basically wasted, and there's huge excess capacity in the system. So SIP operation is currently only 25 to 30% of the total sunshine hours in a year. So there are two ways to increase this capacity utilization. One is to use it for running husking machines, threshing machines, cold storage, etc., like running this through the solar energy and then selling the service to farmers. But it also has its limitations, because often the pumps are set up in the middle of the field, and it's difficult for the farmers to go to the field with their crop or their grains for husking or threshing, etc. The more viable option is probably grid integration, where maybe they can earn up to 1 lakh BDT per year for a 30 kilowatt panel size capacity pumps, which would be similar to what they get from irrigation. So there's scope for 80 to 100% increase in revenue, which would make these systems more viable. So as in conclusion, what we find is the SIPs are an attractive alternative to diesel-based irrigation, especially our study is in Bangladesh, but this is, I think, also learnings for Eastern India and Nepal, Tarai, where the situations are similar. They mitigate emissions by replacing diesel without any penalty or yield on farmers, and there are important co-benefits of cost and labor saving for farmers. ITCO's fee-for-service model is a unique example for where private companies are taking the risk and investing, which enables SIP expansion with lower subsidy and So there's, as I said, there's learning for neighboring regions, but we also have to be careful, and a suitability analysis needs to be done before trying this out in those regions. And finally, in any off-grid area, investment in solar pump requires improvement in alternative uses of panels, because there might scope of huge excess capacity to be there. So financial sustainability is largely dependent on Boro and excess capacity for the rest of the year, what we see in Bangladesh. So in that case, there is requirement of increasing the capacity utilization is crucial, which will increase sponsor revenue and reduce dependency on Boro just for their viability. And so the policy implication of this is promote grid integration wherever possible, and also other users of panels. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Mitra. Right, so we have now reached the end of the presentation, and it's now time for the Q&A session. So first of all, apologies, I am experiencing myself some connections issues. So that's why my camera is not on anymore, and hopefully it will be stable until throughout the Q&A session. So we have already some questions from our attendants, and it was about actually the first presentation from Dr. Zaman, and it's also related to your presentation, Dr. Archisman. For Dr. Zaman, the price paid per unit of water by the customer, does it include the CapEx recovery, or is it only covering the operation costs, the OpEx? I don't know if Dr. Zaman is.
Yeah, okay, yeah, I can follow. Yeah.
Okay.
I think I have shown is the depreciation. It includes the investment cost, not at time for the total period. It is just as a depreciation. It is added with the system, and whole investment is just as a per hour for the total period of life, and then it is converted into per hour and related with the volume of the water per hour. That's the being charged from the farmers, the users.
Okay, very good, thank you. What about you, Dr. Archisman? You said that the investment cost is covered by the private companies or NGOs. Is it? Excuse me, I am going back to the. Sorry, I've lost the question. Yeah, the subsidy you mentioned, is it through a grant or any other mechanism from for the covering of the capex of the investment?
Yeah, so the private company is not paying for the entire amount. So the grant portion is it's coming from donors and some part of it from the government also. That's 50%. Then 35% is the loan amount. That's, I think, World Bank is one, and there's another organization. So basically, these are low interest rate, relatively low. So the sponsors pay around 6% interest rate on these, and 15% is coming from the sponsors. I hope that answers the question.
Yes. So yeah, I have actually heard your answer, but still facing some connection issues. So another question is related to the presentation of Dr. Niels. Is there a risk for a complete shift of agricultural practices towards high value crops throughout the year? Because you said that these high value crops were here to actually bridge the gap during the dry season. Is there a risk of a complete shift of agricultural practice and having these high value crops throughout the year?
I don't understand the question. I didn't understand. Is the risk of what?
Oh, sorry, of complete shift of agricultural practice, meaning that the farmers will completely move on from rice cultivation that they are now doing during the wet season to high value crops throughout the year.
No. In fact, as it is now, the high value crops are grown. Let me back up. The higher value crops are actually grown now in some of the areas where the soil moisture is sufficient to carry through, the production season during the dry season for high value crops. Regarding, and that's maybe 10 to 20% of the cultivated area in the irrigation schemes that are to be rehabilitated or constructed. In terms of the wet season crop, there's you talk about the risk of moving away from producing rice. Well, a lot of that rice during the wet season is a food security crop. The high value crops are mostly to be produced in a very, very small parts of the 1 hectare or 1.5 hectare that each of the farmers have, but intensified high value crop production, which can be done a number of times. So there may be some drop in the total area in the irrigation in the wet season. It's possible, it could happen that they would produce some crop on a very small portion of the land that's been used during the wet season, but that's not our emphasis. Our emphasis is on getting into the fields as early as possible with the high value crops that have traditionally not been grown, at least at the scale whereby it's attracted buyers. So initially, it's mostly just dry season. That's all we're talking about is dry season production of these crops. Watermelon, for example, can be started early in greenhouses, for example. High tunnels, shade. The seedlings can be produced early, even during the latter part of the monsoon season, so that they can be transferred, so that they can be sold in December instead of waiting until February or March. So there's these early season and late season opportunities which we saw reflected in the prices early and late season within the dry season. I don't know if that answers your question, but there's too much dependency on rice during the wet season.
Yes.
There's really no real threat, I don't think, that anyone has mentioned or thought about at this stage, because we're so early, but we're so early in the process of moving to a little bit of land, moving into high value crops. We would expect that they would continue to produce during the dry season, even some crops that aren't necessarily considered high value. For example, there's cassava. There's a number of staple commodities that they've been producing during the dry season, which are more drought tolerant, which they won't need to produce anymore as a cash crop, because they can produce high value crops at a higher value, at higher margin. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Dr. Niels. This answers completely the question. Now, a question to Dr. Tangibayeva. Are you observing any change in farmer behavior as a result of having insurance? For example, are they taking more risk and investing in higher value crops? Do you have this feedback already from your project?
Yes, thank you for the question. We are exactly looking into it, and to top up on the previous question and the previous answer, we actually understand and found that the farmers' behavior and their involvement is very important. They have quite a lot of discretion about the resources that in the way how they use, maybe not that much in the way what kind of crop they are choosing, but they really have a lot of discretion about how they withdraw water and what kind of the effort and intensity of the agriculture they are doing. And in this way, of course, high value crops is their preference, and it's not necessarily climate resistant, and it's not necessarily resource efficient. And even if it's not about having more risk, but making them more informed as planners and as the type of agriculture they are doing. We are quite interested into understanding this linkage between the having these options for them to get insurance and the practices that they would be affected by this. This is an open question yet, but thank you. This is exactly what we are trying to understand.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Tangibayeva, for your answer. We are looking forward to the results of your study. And last question actually was about the business model, because all the business model that were and the business cases that were presented today by all our speakers were about irrigation and agriculture. And our attendee asked if there was any other application for this kind of new business model in other scopes, like for example for drinking water. For this, I would like to inform our attendants that for this presentation today, we focused on irrigation and agriculture, but there was a session yesterday, and there are other sessions during this Asian Water Forum, which are actually tackling this topic of creating new business model for drinking water supply. Namely, maybe you can have, there was a session yesterday called Strengthening Wash Towards Universal Access, which presented various solutions for this kind of water supply. So I recommend getting into the presentation that were presented yesterday. This is also linked to another question. Can the slides, can the slides of for presentation be shared? Yes, it will be available on the website of this Asian Water Forum. And another question, just to wrap. Yeah. Are the solar panels company able to earn carbon credit given the reduction in greenhouse gas emissions by promoting a switch from diesel to solar pumps? So this is for Mr. Mitra.
As far as I know, they were not earning carbon credits, but to be frank, I am not fully sure. So yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Mitra. So I don't know, maybe do we have any other question from the attendance for this this session? Okay, it seems that so if there is no other, let me have a last check. If there is no other question, we can move towards the closing of this this technical session today. And to conclude this technical session, so first of all, I would like to thank all our attendees for their question and all our speakers for giving very clear answers to these questions. Thank you also our speakers for their very interesting presentations. During this session, we have seen various opportunities for agriculture financing and private sector involvement to contribute to the sustainable practice of irrigation and ensure the productivity of the crops.
In the video, and we'll get a team photo. Thanks. Alexia, can you?
Hello. Sorry. Okay. Sorry. Okay, so excuse me, I was a bit confused with some. Okay, so before closing this session, we will take a team photo for sure. So during the first session, with Dr. Zaman, we could see that under certain modality, a sustainable business model for self-financed irrigation is feasible, and it's also replicable. It shows also some opportunities for replicability. With Dr. Niels on the second session, Dr. Niels showed also that high-value crops can create good opportunities to create new markets, viable markets, either on the domestic market or
Yeah, it seems like we've lost Alex. Alex is back.
Oh, I was actually concluding, and I didn't know that you could not hear me.
We only lost about 10 seconds of you. Carry on, please.
Okay. So I was actually underlining the relevance of the approach of index insurance of soil moisture presented by Dr. Tanguy Bayeva in the context of global climate change.
Okay, it seems we've lost Alexia once again. It's Jeff Wilson here. I'm just it's back up. Alexia, you're back again. We lost you for about 10 seconds once again.
Oh, well, I think I will finish on this then. So I hope that, like me, you have found these presentations very interesting, and I would like to express again my gratitude to all our guest speakers for sharing their works and experience in water resources management for agriculture, also to the audience for the questions asked, and to the Young Water Professional Rapporteur for this session. We are highly encouraging our attendees to attend other sessions of this Asia Water Forum. It continues until tomorrow, so there are also other very interesting topics. So let's take a group picture, an attendance picture. I will turn it over to the production to do it, if it's okay.